Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I am coming back at you with another Wargaming and miniature video. In this video, we're going to continue on with our Battlegroup boot camp. So to get you caught up, as a summary of what we've done so far, we've talked about orders and issuing orders and how the turn works. We've talked about movement, how to move your troops, what the terrain, how it affects your movement. We talked about suppressive fire. We talked about aimed fire with small arms. We talked about the different qualities of some of the different weapons. And then we broke into HE fire against vehicles, deployed guns, and infantry. And now we're going to be talking about aimed fire with armor-piercing shells. So basically this is tank on tank, anti-tank on tank. You get the idea. It's armor piercing. Okay, armor piercing or anti-tank shells are designed to punch through armor with the velocity and weight. Lacking the blast of a high explosive, they aren't much use for area fire, but instead specialize in aimed fire. An armor-piercing shell is probably your best hope of destroying enemy tanks and other armored fighting vehicles. Follow these steps. Short. Observe the target. Whenever you do aimed fire, you have to observe the target. Then you have to roll to hit the target. Then you roll on the armor penetration table, and then the target makes a morale check. Notice how there's no cover save. The reason why is that's built into the armor penetration table. Your cover is your armor. Okay, observation. This is exactly the same as all forms of aimed fire. It's repeated here for clarity. Here's the chart. You've seen it before. There it is. To hit. With the enemy observed, the next task is to hit them. With armor-piercing shells, this involves rolling to hit. Check the score required based on the range. Okay, you'll notice that I think that's very similar to your... this chart is very similar to your aimed fire with HE shells. And I will also point out that in the last video we talked about there was no this target is obscured -1, but on this table, on this page of the book, page 36, it does have a target obscured -1. So I actually think that there was a little mix-up. We'll figure that out on the videos. I'm sure I will post it and I'll correct myself. So based on the range, 10-inch, 20-inch, 30 inches, all the way up to 70. If you move, you get a -1. If your target moves, you get a -1. If you will plan to move, you get a -1. If your target is a deployed gun, like an anti-tank gun, that's going to be harder to hit. If you have an ace crew, you get a plus to hit. And if the target is obscured, you get a -1. Okay, basically they're saying you're taking direct fire over a fence or a hedge, or they're deployed in the woods. It should be harder to hit them. Okay. Now, the rule of 1 and 6s. Regardless of modifiers, a dice roll of 1 is always a miss, and a dice roll of 6 is always a hit. So even if a moving firer is shooting at a target 40 to 50 inches away, which moved and is obscured, a 6 will still hit. So it's like critical fumble, critical hit. You get the idea. Okay, extended range. Extended range is an extra range band, only available to some guns, whose accuracy and velocity allows them to fire that far, with a chance of success. At longer ranges, guns capable of firing at this range are noted in the equipment data sections, and to hit at extended ranges always requires a 6. So basically, when you shoot at extended range, you have to get a critical hit. Okay. Next part of it, armor penetration. Okay, this is the largest section because the way they work armor, I'm going to step out of the rule book and just talk out of my mind right now. The way they do armor piercing is kind of a classic way of doing armor piercing. It's not a modern way of doing armor piercing. The modern way is to give your target an armor value, a numerical value, and then give the shooting gun a numerical value, and then subtract it, and then roll that number or higher to penetrate. So hypothetically, like if this had a armor of 12 and this had a penetration of 8, he would shoot that and you would have to roll a 4 or better on a die to penetrate, right? But in the classic way, which this game uses, which I think I could probably change it to a numerical value if I really struggled or if you really wanted to, but they don't want to confuse anyone when it comes to the armor penetration table. They give the gun a penetration value, it's numerical, and they give the target that you're shooting at an armor value that is alphanumeric. It's a letter. But it winds up being a chart, and it's not an equal 1-to-1. So yeah, so it's not an exact numerical value that I could convert this into because some of the numbers overlap. And I'll put the armor penetration table up on the screen so that you can follow along. So every gun has an armor penetration power rated from 1 to 15, 1 being the smallest, lowest velocity weapon, while a 15 is the largest, most fearsome anti-tank gun. Likewise, vehicles have an armor rating from A to O on their front, side, and rear, with an A being the thickest and an O is the thinnest, but it is still armor. Any soft-skinned vehicles hit with an armor-piercing shell use the SS column, or soft skin. Damage to armor vehicles. If a hit is scored against an armored vehicle, cross-reference the gun's armor penetration with the defender's armor value, and that will give you a penetration roll of 2d6. Just using this as an example, I'm going to go straight down the middle. Let's say a 9 armor piercing against a J armor. You're looking at a 5 or better on 2 dice. Okay, damage to deployed guns, right? Like an anti-tank gun, artillery piece, something like that. All deployed guns count as having an armor value of N. Okay, N is your deployed guns. I get gun, G-U-N. It's the way I'm going to have to remember it. This results armored vehicles remain the same. Note, there is additional -1 to hit with armor-piercing shells because deployed guns are not normally as large as vehicles. So, like that gun is much smaller than that vehicle or that vehicle. Damage to soft-skin vehicles. Let's say a Jeep or truck. Treat soft-skin vehicles as armored vehicles, except a soft-skin vehicle cannot be immobilized, because even if only immobilized, the crew will abandon it, so it counts as destroyed instead. Any passengers take a D3 losses per unit as for the vehicle destroyed by small arms. So far, so good. Damage to infantry. If an armor-piercing shell is fired at an infantry unit, then it is unlikely to do much damage. It just isn't designed for that job. Roll to observe and hit as normal. If the hit roll is a 6, then the infantry unit takes 1 hit. Otherwise, the shot misses. The infantry unit still gets a cover save against the hit. So it's like firing 1 bullet. And if you roll a 6, they get a cover save. Okay. And then you have morale test. The target unit might then be required to make a morale test. See unit morale later. But suffice it to say, basically, a hit, regardless of the damage result, will require the target to make a morale test. So in armor piercing, if I shoot this tank and I hit it and it bounces off, they still have to make a morale check because they just got hit with an anti-tank shell. Okay, and if you look on the armor penetration table, it says your result. Remember that number we need to roll earlier? I said an armor piercing of 9 against a J. I needed a 5 or better. Okay, greater than that number on 2 dice, then the round penetrates the armor and the vehicle is destroyed. So if I roll a 6 or more, it's destroyed. Less than equals a glancing hit. So if I roll a 4 or less. If the 2 dice are rolled and less than the score required, the shot glances off, doing no serious damage. The vehicle must still make a morale test for being hit and not destroyed. So now if I roll equal to it, a 5. If the 2 dice are rolled and the dice is equal to the required score, then the target is automatically pinned, not destroyed. The vehicle must still make a morale test for being hit and not destroyed. So he shoots across the table, he hits this, boom. I roll exactly a 5. They're pinned. Double ones. If I roll snake eyes, then the vehicle is immobilized for the rest of the game. The vehicle must still make a morale test for being hit, but not destroyed. Okay, so on that 5 that I needed, if you roll snake eyes, it's immobilized. If I roll a 3 or a 4, nothing happens, it bounced off. If I roll a 5, it gets pinned. And if I roll a 6 or better, it's destroyed. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. And that's on the table. It should be on the table where you can see the results. Now there is a shirts and plates. Like Panzer IVs have these, or even Stugs would have these additional armor plates along the side or around the turrets. In order to counter the Red Army's widespread use of anti-tank rifles, the Germans introduced an additional standoff armor plate called skirts. A vehicle with skirts increases its side armor by 1 level against any hits with a penetration value of 5 or less. So that's a little bit of a memory hole keeping there. Might want to take a note, put that on your card. A weapon with a penetration of 6 or more is not affected by the skirts. And so that would affect mortars, right? So mortars have a 1, 2, or 3 HE. If the HE penetration is 5 or less, the skirts would still apply. And vehicles with skirts have them included in their vehicle data cards. Okay, before we go on to the example, I want to talk about anti-tank grenades. All sides made wide use of anti-tank grenades, teller mines, satchel charges, Molotov cocktails, infantry-borne anti-tank weapons. Using these was very dangerous because you had to get right up to the enemy tank. An infantry unit equipped with anti-tank grenades that has been given an infantry close assault order can attempt to attack a single enemy vehicle. Move the infantry unit to within 5 inches of the target, then roll a d6 on the anti-tank grenade attack table. They must still roll even if the target is pinned. So basically it's like a free result. You just go straight to the results. A unit equipped with anti-tank grenades is assumed to have enough to last the battle. So you don't like expend them. So they can use them as often as they like. Okay, so if you roll a 1, heavy casualties. Remove 1d3 infantrymen from the attacking squad, cut down by defensive fire during the attempt. This will also cause the unit to take a morale test. No damage is caused to the target vehicle. You know, that 1-6 result, the 1 is a fumble. Okay. 2 through 4, casualty. Remove 1 infantryman from the attacking squad. This will also cause the unit to make a morale check. No damage is caused to the target vehicle. So right now, 1 through 4 is all damage to the infantry. 5 or 6, success. 5 is a mine is successfully placed on the target vehicle. Make a single penetration value 6 attack against the vehicle's side armor value. So a 5 gets you a 6 on the side. Now if you roll a 6, you place a mine, but now you get your penetration as 6 against the rear. All right, and you still have to roll on the armor penetration table. It's just that you have a 6 armor penetration and you're attacking either their side or rear armor. So a close assault will never attack their front armor. Okay, so that should be, this should be pretty self-explanatory. There's no examples here, so I'll make one up. Okay, so this Sherman, right, has a, aimed, right? It has to roll to observe this martyr, right? So you look at the martyr is in the open, and it's been shooting at the Sherman. So we're going to say vehicle in open. But then again, I'm shooting across this hedge and this fence, so we'll call it obscured. Vehicle obscured, firing. I still only need a 2 or better. So let's just say he's spotted. A 2 or better is pretty easy. Aimed fire, right? So we measure the distance. It looks like 15 inches. 15 inches needs a 3 or better. The target did not move. The firer did not move and will not move. The target is not a deployed gun. He's not an ace crew. So, but it does have target obscured -1. So I need a 4 or better to hit that guy. I roll a die. I get higher than a 4. Hit. Okay. Now that he's hit, we have to compare our weapons armor penetration value. And I'm just looking at a straight up M4 Sherman at 10 to 20 inches. AP has a 6. So I'm hitting him with a 6. By the way, I'm looking at this chart right there, which is probably not in focus, but 75, 10 to 20 inches. No, that's a 76. M4. Here we go. Over here. 10 to 20 inches. armor piercing, 6. Okay, and then the Martyr 3M, right? That's a Martyr 3M. So looking at the Martyr 3M here, it has a front armor of November. So we take, what do we have? A 6 versus a November. So 6 versus November. I only need a 4 or better to penetrate. You roll 2 dice. Now, if I rolled Snake Eyes, he would be immobilized. If I rolled less than a 4, it would be no effect, but there would still be a morale check. If I rolled a 4, he would be pinned. But because I rolled more than a 4, I rolled a 5, he is eliminated. And when he gets eliminated, a battle counter has to be drawn for the German side. When a unit is eliminated, there's no morale check, because the unit that would be affected by the morale check, this is through all the firing, the unit that would be affected by the morale check is no longer on the table. So you don't bother rolling morale for units that have been destroyed. What you do is you draw a battle counter for your side, your army, because that affects your overall morale. It's reducing the morale. And when it gets to 0, remember, you'll lose the game. All right, that was aimed fire with armor piercing shells. I think that was pretty cut and dry, pretty easy to figure out. You have to observe, you have to hit, you have to penetrate. That's it. All right, now in the next video, we're going to go into indirect artillery fire, and after that, we'll be touching on morale. All right, guys, thanks for coming out and checking out this video, and I'll see you in the next one.